Today's episode is entitled What Robert Malone Could Not Tell Joe Rogan. And in this special episode, we're going to cover what, in my view, what the rest of the story is, following from the bombshell interview between Robert Malone and Joe Rogan. I mean, it just aired a few days ago. And I think it's one of the most important interviews of 2021. And many critical, important things were covered in that podcast, and both of the people there did a fantastic job. I'll talk about that in more detail when we come back here from the break. But in this episode, I'm going to give you my analysis of what the rest of the story is, what Robert Malone could not talk about, and I'll explain why. Stay with us. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. So, as you know, the title of this special broadcast today is What Robert Malone Could Not Tell Joe Rogan. So, for context, Robert Malone was interviewed by Joe Rogan, of course, Dr. So, number one, I want to say to Dr. Robert Malone, the world applauds you, and the world is grateful for your voice and your courage. And by the way, also just for the record, what I'm saying here today, even though the title is What Robert Malone Could Not Tell Joe Rogan, in no way am I claiming to speak on behalf of Robert Malone. I'm sorry, Dr. Robert Malone, nor am I speaking on behalf of Joe Rogan, obviously. So what I'm about to tell you are things that's my analysis that neither one of them have said for reasons that I will offer here. But I don't want anybody to misunderstand and think that I'm pretending that Robert Malone would have said these things if he had more time or something like that. No. That's not what this is. This is something I think much bigger, actually. Now then, I also want to applaud Joe Rogan for this, because Joe Rogan has really awakened. And Joe, he's very popular with the mainstream. And as a result of that, he's under tremendous pressure to conform to the mainstream narratives. He's been threatened, he's been sued, he's been, censored. It's crazy. But Joe did a fantastic job on this interview because he listened. He just listened. And occasionally he would ask really good questions that most people would be asking. And this is where Joe has incredible talent as an interviewer. Is he knows he's got a running internal dialogue of what is the audience wondering right now as this Dr. Malone is explaining something really technical, and then Joe might interrupt with a common sense question like, whoa, what is that? Explain that. And that's where Joe is fantastic. He's really done a good job. And he has come around over the last several years to the point where he and his producers are welcoming people, dissenting voices like Dr. Robert Malone and Dr. Peter McCullough and so many other people who I think are very important voices. So I want to applaud both Joe Rogan and Dr. Robert Malone for creating that very, very important interview. It's one of the most important must-listen interviews of the year of 2021. And I think there will be many more to come. And again, just as a disclaimer, what I'm about to tell you here is not in any way, it's not endorsed by Joe Rogan or endorsed by Dr. Robert Malone. And I don't have secret texts from either one of them, to say, wink, wink, please say this, but don't say it's from me. No. Nothing like that has happened. What I'm about to tell you is, I think, the rest of the story that Dr. Robert Malone could not tell you. So let's actually cover that right now. Why Dr. Malone cannot tell you what I'm about to tell you. Number one, and this is one of the things I love about what I do as a free speech journalist or entertainer at times, or a platform developer. I wear all these different hats. I get to do all kinds of fun things. No one licenses me as a professional, so someone can't take away my license, because there is no license for journalism, and thank God. And there's no license to be a comedian, thank God, or they would yank J.P. Sears off the comedy list, right? And he's funny. and to some extent, Joe Rogan, he's a comedian as well, and he can be funny when that's his focus as well. So thank God that I get to do this and no one can take my license. But with Robert Malone, they can take his license, and they're trying to do that. And so he is subject to review boards and medical boards, and really the whole scientific community is a kind of club. And Dr. Robert Malone would reply and say, well, Joe, I can't know what's in other people's minds. I can only tell you the facts. You have to decide for yourself what they mean. And that's where Dr. Robert Malone is doing a great job with his scientific integrity. As a scientist, he is simply stating facts, data, and he will go as far as saying, follow the money as a general understanding of the way the world works, and that greed does exist and corporations exist to earn profits. But he will not publicly state, especially not in a big podcast like Joe Rogan's podcast, he will not state what he thinks are the motivations behind this. So that's what Robert Malone could not tell Joe Rogan, is what are the motivations. Moving everybody over to a digital central bank currency system where it's total surveillance, total control, monetary enslavement of the entire world population. And they will even, well, it's like the WEF says, right? You will own nothing and you will be happy. They want to outlaw private property. They want to move people into these controlled cities where you live in a tiny little, 200 square foot. What's the motivation behind global depopulation? We'll get to that. But this is the first part. Now, I have no idea if Dr. Robert Malone has reached the same conclusion privately or not. And it doesn't matter. I suspect Joe Rogan absolutely knows this, but he may not be talking about it publicly yet. I know that a lot of other people, a lot of other mainstream scientists who once thought these ideas were completely crazy are now, they totally get it. And some of them talk to me privately and they confirm what I'm saying here, but they don't yet say it publicly. Others are starting to say it publicly. So you're going to see in 2022 more big IQ thinkers, speakers, influencers, and so on. They're going to come out publicly and state the only explanation for this. Now, this is where we get into what we might call Alex Jones territory. Now, Alex Jones has a tremendous amount of knowledge, and he has been proven right again and again and again over the last 20 years. And most of the people who thought Alex Jones was completely out of his mind for the last 20 years have now come to realize that he was just ahead of his time. And just again and again and again, Alex has been right. And dare I say that I've been right as well. Although I haven't been doing this as long as Alex, but I've been right about the things that I predicted as well. In fact, there's a kind of a now viral clip of myself and Alex. I was on his show in 2010, and he and I together were talking, again, over 10 years ago. We're not afraid to venture into the deeper depths of the Matrix and really get red pilled and understand how fake so-called reality has been. And as we peel back those layers of deception, we unveil astonishing truths. And then from time to time, we talk about those things publicly. And to someone who's not informed at all, some of these things sound crazy. So in that category, there can be demons, demonic entities, Satan influence, possession by demons, and so on. Okay, that's one category. Another category is extra-dimensional beings, or what you might call entities. And this is what my friend Steve Quayle says is currently inhabiting the Pope Francis. He refers to him as the entity. And then, thirdly, there you have aliens, which is obviously non-terrestrial civilizations, other beings, other advanced civilizations in the universe, which is a very, very big place. So those are the three basic categories that people understand. that all qualify as non-terrestrial. Again, demons, extra-dimensional entities, and aliens, as they're all typically known. Could there be some other category that we're not aware of? Yes, or possibly hybrid variations of those three? Absolutely. None of us know for sure exactly what's happening. But I don't want to get too deep in the woods on this, but some people believe that so-called aliens are actually demons and that extra-dimensional beings are just really advanced aliens and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of debate about that. I'm not going to get into the debate. Let's just say there are non-human, non-terrestrial forces at work in our universe, which, by the way, is confirmed by the Bible itself. And the Bible talks about Satan, and fallen angels and all of this. Especially you go into some of the chapters of the Bible that were removed, and you really get into the the fallen angels and the giants and all of this, and the hybrid breeding with humans and so on. It gets very deep. But when you have this expansive view of the universe, you understand that, number one, the universe is far, far older than human civilization, which is only about 5 to 10,000 years old, at least as we currently understand it. You also learn that there were ancient civilizations that were destroyed. So the true history of the Earth has been hidden from us, and there were very advanced ancient civilizations. And if you really look into the history of Earth, you understand that there was contact with non-terrestrial entities or beings throughout the history of the Earth. And this is reflected in all the ancient civilizations. It's why they have, I remember I visited the museum in Quito, Ecuador, when I lived in South America. And in the museum, I actually saw the physical carvings of the ancient Inca, and they carved out a space shuttle. It's like a perfect replica of the space shuttle. That was a carving made, I forgot how many thousand years ago or whatever. It's a couple thousand years old, okay? And I saw it myself with my own two eyes in the museum. It's been dated to that time and so on and so forth. And I saw other carvings and other very intricate pieces of art that showed what looked like astronauts and things like that, okay? So and the same thing's true in ancient Chinese civilization, ancient European civilizations, and you just go, but a lot of Central and South American, Mayan, Incan, what else? Indigenous Aborigines in Australia, they've had lots of contact as well. It's just all throughout the world, okay? So if you didn't know this information, that's not your fault. It's because the true history of where we came from has been, stripped from us and altered, and they're trying to deceive us and give us a warped explanation of things. So in truth, we humans have never been alone. We have lived in a universe that is extremely, shall we say, widely populated with non-terrestrial entities, and is also populated with demonic entities that somehow work in another dimension. Maybe we don't know exactly how they work, but they have infested many people on our planet today. I believe they've infested many politicians, and depends on how deep down this rabbit hole you want to go, by the way. But these demonic entities, they do feed on fear from children. So they're the ones who are into the child trafficking. They're the ones that are into the abortion. They're the ones that are into child sacrifice. So, these are the Epsteins and all those rings. And then the demonic entities are actually harvesting fear, the actual energy of psychic fear out of children, as an energy source for their dark being. It's kind of like a battery. It's like out of the Matrix. They've turned a human being into a copper top, and they feed off children's fear. This is all completely real. And you can imagine why, people like Dr. Robert Malone are not going to go into this realm, because this gets pretty dark and pretty deep and pretty ugly very quickly. But you'll hear people like Alex Jones talk about it publicly, and often he'll follow it up by saying, it's psychically terrorizing to even investigate these realms. because when you learn what they do to children, and that there is an entire global system, an entire economy of nations, and it involves the Vatican, it involves the Pope entity, of course, and it involves, governors, senators, presidents of nations around the world. It involves the highest level people, big corporate people, big tech CEOs, rich globalists. They're all doing the same thing. They're all trafficking children, feeding off children. Some of them do it for longevity. Ambrosia, blood transfusions. They're actually tapping the blood of children, just bleeding them out, and then they kill them. But they use their blood to try to, live forever. And these are the same people who are into transhumanism and demonism, spirit cooking, and all that. It's all real. And when Alex talks about it, he always ends up saying, it's too sick, can't get into it. You wouldn't believe what's going on. And the way they get away with it is that people just don't believe it's possible because it's too evil. And me personally, I can barely get into this subject either because I can't deal with how evil it is. I've interviewed a few people over the years about just the human organ trafficking and the blood markets. I don't know if well, it's all real. That's all I'm saying. So there's organ harvesting markets. All right. So it's all real. Now, kind of getting to the big conclusion here. So there are entities that exist, that have existed. They've been around long before modern human civilization. And whatever these entities are, they no longer have a purpose for human beings. They no longer need human civilization, and they would rather have a giant ethnic cleansing of this planet. And they want the planet for themselves, slaughtered. So the people going along with this at the very highest levels, it's just the very highest levels. It might be only a couple thousand people on the whole planet. They've been promised a literal seat on the escape starship to go to some other planet and end up living out on human colonies there while Earth is taken over and all human beings are slaughtered. Okay, so they're just along temporarily, and they will be completely eliminated by the globalists as well. So keep that in mind. Everybody going along with this is going to be slaughtered if the globalists get their way. So all of you listening who are going along with this, recognize you won't survive it either. So you might as well fight for humanity right now, because otherwise you're going to lose everything, including your life, your civilization, and your planet. Yeah, just to be clear, okay? And that's a point that Alex Jones gets very well. Okay, so now the big question becomes, well, whoever's behind this, why do they want Earth? Why do they want humans to be eliminated so that they can have Earth for themselves? Now, I answered this question in 2019 in a presentation I gave live in front of thousands of people in Branson, Missouri. If you haven't seen that presentation yet, it's called Oblivion Agenda. And I have that speech for you, the video, and some follow-up discussion at oblivionagenda.com. And that's a very valid view, and that may be exactly what's going on here. But there's a different explanation, which in some ways is actually consistent with that if you equate, quote, aliens with demons. And what this point of view says is that humans have failed the cosmic test of being stewards for planet Earth. And to understand this theory and why we would be, as a species, eliminated from planet Earth, you have to understand really exopolitics, which is the politics of everything beyond Earth, which means you have to understand the economics, or let's say galactic economics. So you have to understand the technology that exists outside Earth civilizations, such as ubiquitous faster than light travel, energy storage, faster than light communications, using quantum mechanics and the superposition of quantum bits and so on. There are many, many elements to this, but what makes Earth so valuable in the cosmos has to be understood in terms of, real estate, primarily cosmic real estate and a few other factors. So you need to understand, where is Earth in the Milky Way galaxy? Where does it exist on one of the spiral arms? When you understand its position and its position relative to other high density star clusters that probably host life, it starts to make a lot more sense. You understand that Earth is, well, not just Earth, but the Milky Way galaxy is kind of a hub in the middle of a lot of galaxies. It's kind of like almost the Milky Way is sort of the Panama Canal of being able to traverse two other galaxies. And I know galaxies are big, and I know they're very, very far away. Even the Milky Way is huge. Even if you travel at the speed of light, it would take you something like 200,000 years just to go from end to end of the spiral diameter of our own galaxy, not to mention other galaxies. But I'm not going to get into this here, but when you can summon an enormous amount of energy, you can project a bending of space-time, and you can travel at many multiples faster than the speed of light. And that's faster than light travel, or FTL. And it's a common technology in the cosmos. So what makes Earth so special? Well, I mean, where to begin? So first of all, it's in the Goldilocks zone around the sun. Earth has an axial tilt relative to its orbital plane around the sun. Earth has a very large, very stable moon with a stable orbit that has tidal lock around planet Earth, which means that the dark side of the moon always faces away from the planet, making it ideal for planetary defense and observation of space and so on. Earth has obviously liquid water. It's mostly a water planet. About 3/4 of the surface is water. Earth has an atmosphere with a certain chemical composition, mostly nitrogen, a little bit of oxygen, a tiny amount of carbon dioxide, and argon, I believe. And you start to put all this together. There are AI systems in our universe, but carbon-based life is the biological basis of all the living, creatures and beings that are physical in our universe. And when you have carbon-based life, then the elements that we have on our planet and the conditions of our planet, the right temperature, the right atmospheric pressure, the right amount of gravity, and so on, the right distance from the sun, all of this. Oh, plus don't forget the magnetosphere. You have to have a really strong magnetosphere in order to create a shield around the planet, so you don't have ionizing radiation destroying the genetic integrity of the species that are on the planet, and so on and so forth. I mean, there are probably 1,000 reasons why Earth is so extremely valuable, why it's a gem in the universe. And then here we are as Earthlings trashing the place, just trashing it, just polluting the oceans with microplastics, throwing heavy metals all up into the air. Here, have some cadmium, have some lead, right? We're just trashing it. And nuclear tests all over the place for many decades, including the United States, did hundreds of nuclear detonations. And you can still, by the way, detect the radioisotopes in the background. I've done that in my lab, by the way. I've done like a full scan of the mass spec of all the elements, and I can actually see at sub parts per billion concentrations, I can see radioisotopes from old nuclear explosions, like cesium-137. I can find them. They're still out there. They're floating around because it hasn't been that long. Yeah, I mean, don't forget, cesium-137 takes about 10 half-lives to be undetectable. So that's about 3 centuries for that. And there have not been 3 centuries yet, since we've been setting off those bombs. But my point is, we are trashing the planet. So apparently some decision has been made by somebody somewhere, some group. So, well, humans are just crazy animals who've gained some technology and they're using it to destroy their entire planet, and we can't allow that. It's time to remove them. And, better luck next time. So that's the other theory of what's going on. So again, you have the biblical theory, and then you have this, humans have failed the cosmic IQ test theory. There might be other theories as well. I'm just presenting those two because those are the most common ones. So that, folks, that's the summary of what's actually going on. So yes, what Dr. Robert Malone told Joe Rogan is right on the money, and it explains a lot. He has established that they're violating everything to try to inject everybody. But the rest of the story is they're doing that because it's global extermination, and they're doing that because there is a non-terrestrial influence that has ordered the globalists to cleanse the planet. And the reason that's happening is one of those two explanations I just gave you. Either humans have failed the cosmic IQ test, or this is the last stage of the war between Satan and God, and Satan is trying his best to do the total destruction of every being created in the image of God, and God's going to come and save us at the very end with the second coming of Christ, book of Revelation, end times, all of that. And again, perhaps these are really the same conclusions. Perhaps it's just two different ways of looking at the same series of events that's about to happen. You know, look at what did John see on the island of Patmos? Is that, or Patmos? How do you say it? What did he see happening? You know, this war between evil and good, and the final salvation of those who had faith in life and faith in God and their Creator. This seems to be consistent with what we're going into. So there you go, folks. That's the interpretation that you will never hear from a licensed doctor or someone whose license can be yanked by a medical board. They will never go into these realms. And that's why people like myself and Alex Jones and David Icke and others, you know, we go deep down the rabbit hole and dig into what's really going on. And Steve Quayle as well, he knows all about this. And we will bring you this information because this is the big, big picture of what's really happening. We are not alone in this universe, folks. Have no illusions. We are not alone. There's liquid water on Mars. NASA just admitted it. They're flying a helicopter around on Mars, so obviously there's an atmosphere on Mars. I mean, just the cover-up of life on Mars for decades is just one of the most laughable chapters of junk science. Is like trying to convince us there's no such thing as life on any other planets. Give me a break. There's life on just about every planet, and in our solar system, I should clarify. And there's life on just about every moon in most of the planets in our solar system. Not the outer ones, obviously, but where there's enough sunlight, there's life. There's microbial life. And on Mars and other planets, and even the once planet that was destroyed before, probably in an actual space battle. So watch out for the deep state and what's called the cosmic false flag scenario, where they roll out some advanced Air Force aircraft with, reverse engineered alien propulsion systems or something, and then they try to convince everybody that the aliens are here, and they've told us all to get vaccinated and give up our guns and answer to the United Nations or some BS like that. Non-locality, the faster than light communication, all kinds of things, quantum computing. There's a lot of technology that has been denied us, and hopefully it's all about to get released. We'll see. All right, so thanks for listening. I hope that gives you some stuff to chew on for a while.